Hi everyone, it is really exciting to be here today and talk about performance. My name is Leonardo Faria and this is my third CascadiaJS this year in this brand new format. I am a Brazilian living in Vancouver, Canada and working at Thinkific. Thinkific enables content creators to market, sell and deliver their online courses. We are always hiring. You can find me online on my Twitter, LinkedIn, or at my website, leonardofaria.net. My talk today will be divided into three parts. First, I want to briefly introduce Lighthouse, Web Vitals, and some other concepts to understand performance on the web and get everybody on the same page. Next, I want to share how I use Lighthouse and some other tools to help me monitor and find performance issues. In the last part of this talk, I want to cover how tools have helped me and some strategies that I have been using to improve performance in a big production product. I may mention some companies and products that I'm using during this talk, but I'm not affiliated with them. I will also share these slides and my speaker notes right after the end. Let's start with an introduction to Lighthouse, Web Vitals, lab versus field data, and HAR files. First things first, Lighthouse is a tool created by Google to measure web page quality in different areas. In this talk, I will focus on performance, but Lighthouse also covers accessibility, best practices, SEO, and PAA. Lighthouse will analyze different page aspects for each area and then give a score and recommendations to improve the page. Let's see a report live. The HTML report is organized and easy to understand. Let's take a look in the performance one. We have metrics, screenshots of the page being rendered, and suggestions to make your page load faster. You can get that report in different ways. I often use Chrome DevTools or Google PageSpeed Insights for ad hoc tests of the page that I'm working on. The CLI and Node module are helpful for automated scripts. It is essential to mention that we can emulate different devices and internet connections during the tests, which help us understand what users face when using our product. The data used in the HTML report is also available in a JSON format, as you can see here in Firefox. If you're building your custom tool, you can parse this file to get metrics and their description, the size of files, and even the screenshots of the page being rendered. Here is the image encoded in a basic 64 format. The final performance score that you see in the report is calculated based on different metrics: FCP, SI, LCP, TTI, TBT, and CLS. We will understand better this alphabet soup in the following slides, starting with Web Vitals. Web Vitals is an initiative that provides quality signals that are essential to delivering a great user experience on the web. Different metrics cover different parts of the browser experience, helping us understand what can be done better for our users. They are all unique and relevant in their ways, and let me start with Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals is a subset of Web Vitals, which Google recently started using in their PageRank algorithm. These metrics are related to speed, responsiveness, and visual stability. The first of them, largest contentful paint, measures how long it takes for the largest content element, for example, a hero image or video, to become visible in the user's viewport. Slow response times and big resource load times will affect negatively this metric. Next, we have first input delay. FID measures responsiveness by tracking the delay between a user clicks on something and the browser executes the action. Lots of unwanted CSS, JavaScript, and third-party code will impact this metric. Finally, we have cumulative layout shift. CLS tracks visual stability by quantifying the number of unexpected layout shifts of page content. We all saw this before. A banner, cookie message, or newsletter subscription form pushing content down the page. Content injected in the page affects user experience and also this metric. Let's go back to the Lighthouse report. We can filter here in the Lighthouse HTML report which opportunities are related to which web vital. We can't measure FID since FID requires some user interaction with the page, but in this case, Google's recommendation is to use total blocking time as a replacement. I often use the web.dev website to understand better what each metric represents and how they can be improved. They also have lots of video content. Optimized for Core Web Vitals by Eddie Osmani is a must-watch. The video brings a study case from a luxury brand and their journey to improve their e-commerce website. One more concept that I want to cover in this introduction is the difference between lab and field data. Lighthouse performs its tests in a controlled environment, which makes things easier to reproduce and debug, but it may not be the reality of your users. This kind of data is helpful to identify and isolate issues. Field data, on the other hand, captures the real-world experience by monitoring user traffic. This data can validate that poor user experience will impact your business, but it is difficult to use this data for identifying issues from a technical perspective. The key message here is combining field data to identify areas that correlate with the business and lab data to validate performance improvements. Last but not least, I also want to talk about HAR. HAR, or HTTP archive, is a JSON formatted file containing all information about the browser's interaction with a page, including JavaScript and CSS assets, cookies, and data sent in forms. Let's inspect a HAR file in the HAR viewer. Keeping HAR files around can help you troubleshoot what is loading in the page and when the files are loaded, since we have this waterfall here. You can also learn which headers were used and if the assets have some sort of compression, along with the response time of the servers. This data can also be visualized and exported in the performance tabs of Chrome, Safari, and Firefox developer tools. Now that we are all on the same page, let's talk about using these tools in the wild. We first started by introducing critical user journeys. As the name implies, Critical user journeys are essential areas of our product that we want to monitor. We want to make sure they will be fast or at least not worse than today. Depending on how big your product is, it may not cover all your code bases. But the main thing here is to cover as much as possible essential user journeys, like the checkout of product and the onboarding of new customers. Focusing on these areas is excellent because you may see an instant improvement in the business metrics once you ship a performance improvement. Moving to details, here's how we automated lab tests. We developed a CLI that used the Lighthouse node module. Using the CLI, we check 9 critical user journeys on an hourly basis. Running tests after deployments can be an alternative. However, we prefer something regularly. The HTML reports created by Lighthouse are uploaded into a AWS S3 bucket for future reference. By parsing the Lighthouse JSON report, we can create a screenshot of the page and also create an HR file with all assets and all information about when they were loaded. Finally, the performance numbers from Lighthouse along with the resource file sizes are sent to a database. By storing metrics in a database, we can quickly create custom reports as we need. In this slide, for example, you can see the improvement of the largest Contentful paint over time. If you don't want to create your custom solution, you can use Lighthouse Monitor. Lighthouse Monitor is an open source project that can be extendable to your needs. With this tool, Lighthouse data can be sent to New Relic or another monitoring tool. If you don't want to implement any custom code, you can also use a SaaS product like Calibre and get all the Lighthouse data tested in similar ways as we do. For field data collection, we use Elastic, which captures Web Vitals data via their monitoring tool. All APM tools these days may have some feature surfacing Web Vitals. They will also offer some extra features like filtering per country or per device. Suppose you don't have an APM in place. In this case, you can also use Google tools like the PageSpeed Insights and the Search Console that contains data from the Chrome User Experience reports. These are extremely easy to set up and use, and they will give you all the information to start working right now. If that is not enough, or if you have some page behind authentication, you can also add a Web Vital JavaScript tracking code to your page and then submit the metrics to your custom URL. But honestly, that would be a bit too extra. I would just recommend using a APM. Now it's part 3. Now that I shared what is in my toolbox, let's talk about how these tools have helped me. We have reports from different critical user journeys. We have HR files, capture requests of the page. We have lots of information from Lighthouse, each one with a list of performance improvements. What to investigate next? How do we create a successful list of projects? Where do we go from here? It is always tricky to prioritize, but I have learned that you need to balance work. Low-hanging fruit brings instant satisfaction and moves the performance needle a bit. However, this approach may not work in the long run because these tasks may be taking your time to solve big architecture problems. There is also the challenge of prioritization based on usage. What to fix first? Something used by everyone but not very often, or some niche feature used by a particular audience all the time. Again, there is no correct answer here, and what we have been doing is mixing a bit of both. Lighthouse reports will help you identify low-hanging fruits. Tasks like optimizing JavaScript and CSS, optimizing images, and removing unused old JavaScript don't require much business feedback. This kind of work can be done independently from feature development, and it will certainly move the needle of performance. Also, don't forget to enable HTTP2 support in your servers. This is something that always keeps coming in the reports. Next, we have some work that is not too small to be considered low-hanging fruit. However, we still need to think about what to do. For not very obvious work, we use the scientific method. We elaborate on a hypothesis to solve a problem, and we test it locally and in staging. Once you have something solid, we ship it behind a feature flag. The usage of feature flags adds safety to the process. Companies usually use them for the release of beta features or growth experience. At work, we also use them to roll out performance changes gradually and revert them if needed. After 1 or 2 weeks, we remove the previous code, keeping the improved one in our code base. I am a big fan of feature flags for this type of work. I do recommend using them as much as possible to avoid any production incidents. Last but not least, let's talk about more extensive projects that impact several code bases, features, and teams. For projects like this, we need something more extensive. In this case, we start with a technical spec highlighting the problem and potential solutions, risks, and timeline. Once I have a technical spec, I share it with other architects and principal engineers for their feedback and review. Along with the technical spec, I also like to create a non-technical spec to share with stakeholders, for example, PMs, showing how users and the business can benefit from the project. I also like making a list of questions and answers that we probably will hear in these conversations. It may be straightforward for you what the problem is and how to solve it, but writing about it, it can also reveal details that you missed. It also reduces misunderstandings that we often see when working in a fast-growing organization. Once we have these 2 documents reviewed, we are ready to start. The development of this work is no different from feature development. We will have sprints, code reviews, QA, and roll out the performance improvements using feature flags as much as possible. That's all from me. Thanks for having me. I have more content about self-development on my website, including a post series about Lighthouse, and I'm open for questions.
Well, that was very interesting. Thank you so much, Leonardo. So we're going to start by taking a question from the AMA channel on the Discord. And I want to remind everybody that if you have questions for a speaker, ask them on their AMA channel. We may include them in these sessions. From Lindsay W., she asks, what tool did you use to view the HAR file? And was that just the Chrome browser?
Yeah, so there is a tool called HAR Viewer. It will be in the slide deck. And we can just like drag and drop like I did in the video, or you can also load the HAR file inside the performance tab from Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. They will show you the rendering of the current page, but they also allow you to load existing file.
All right, cool. And so where can you find the impact of third-party JS code in your performance metrics?
Yeah, the Lighthouse report will give you some understanding. Like you have 500K from like this tracking website, and so that is one way to see it. And another one, it is with the HR file again, because then you have a waterfall of the assets being loaded on the page, so you can really see how long it will take and how that impacts like loading other files.
All right, and so we got time for one more. Why and when did you decide to create your own CLI for Lighthouse?
Yeah, that is a curious question, and we're using a third-party provider that is great, but we just decided to standardize all the monitoring in our company. So we just want to use like the same charts in Grafana and the same stack. So that is why we had to use. So we decided to use Lighthouse by ourselves.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for answering our questions and for giving that really wonderful talk. What we're going to do now is we're going to keep this performance theme going with Andrew Howe, who's going to be talking about creating a culture of front-end performance. So thank you, Leonardo, and over to you, Andrew.